Hey, another episode of Fridays with Freddie. Fred, here's my setup for today's discussion with you. Been in conversation with a lot of schools, and here's my assessment so far of what I'm seeing. There seems to be 2 or 3 lanes of AI going on at the same time. One lane is the senior executive leadership who are trying to think strategically. They're pondering, they're considering, they're evaluating, they're kind of doing a lot of weighing. And maybe they've greenlighted a few things, but in general, they're still in that strategic phase. Then you've got the user groups, let's call it the functional leaders in the business and the classroom, who've started to deploy stuff already. This one's got a little AI agent. This one's got a little bot. This one's done this in the classroom with students. So there's like stuff bubbling up here and there. So one group's being strategic, the other group's executing already. And in the middle, you've got this layer of vendors, everyone from existing vendors who say, oh, now we have this AI feature, to the new vendors entering the market going, hey, we've got this new gizmo and it's powered by AI. And somewhere between all of that, there's a lot of confusion. Are you seeing that? Is that an issue? Is it a concern? And if so, what should schools do about it? If they even have the slightest inclination that, yeah, there's a little bit of all that going on at our institution.
Yeah, I mean, it is, including beyond academics, we have been telling people, start experimenting, right? Start wrapping your head around what AI can do for you. So if we put it in 2 large buckets, Joe, we'll leave the faculty teaching side to the side for a moment. I'm looking at data right now where it says that almost all students are now using AI, right, to do their homework, to work with it, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. ChatGPT, Claude, etc. So on the faculty side, there's a lot of people that are already doing things, but for the purpose of this discussion, from an institutional perspective, what is it that you need to do? So everybody should have a playbook, right? There's some steps that you can take to wrap your heads around what's going on at my campus and what do I need to do, so we can walk through those steps.
Yeah, let's give them the playbook. This is something that you have available. People can just contact you and get a copy of, but walk us through it. How many steps are there to the playbook?
About 6 steps.
Okay.
Step number 1, which of course, look, a lot of these things are logical. First step is, if you want to move forward, you need to know where you are. So you need to do a discovery audit. You should not take more than 2 weeks, 4 weeks. You can use surveys, you can send out emails, you can ask department heads, you can use meetings, whatever. But you need to start getting an accurate view of how AI is being used on your campus. Not just which areas, but what kind of data is being accessed, what kind of data is being used. I mean, God forbid you now have people that are uploading student protected data into publicly available OpenAI, Claude, etc. So I think that's really step 1. Let's get an audit.
And in that audit, you'd want to uncover not just what's already in play, but what people are maybe on the verge of deploying. Hey, I'm talking to this vendor and they just sent me a contract to review, right? For my next budget cycle. So you want to kind of get all that on the table. Got it.
Exactly. And Joe, it's not just vendors, right? I mean, one of the powers of AI is that you can do a lot of stuff on your own using publicly available large language models. So then, okay, so now you have an accurate, or at least the best possible view into how AI is being used. Then step 2 really needs to be, you need to set up an AI governance committee. And you want to involve the largest group of stakeholders. You want to include faculty, you want to include IT, you want to include administrators, you want to include legal, you want to include ethics, if you have an ethics ombudsman. So you want to have an AI governance committee where you start defining how, what's appropriate use of AI, how to request projects, etc. Step number, let's call it 2.5, is really, so now you have an accurate recording of where you are. You have a governance committee that now is going to be the funnel through which most of your AI activities are going to be directed. Then the next step is define your institutional AI strategy. Because that's the other part, right? What is your AI strategy at the institution? Where are you going to focus your priorities, your funds, your seed money, your efforts, etc.? Because once you start using AI, there's a possibility you can use it everywhere, right? You could use it in administrative functions, you could use it in the classroom, you can use it. I mean, it doesn't matter.
For student
experience, etc. So you need to start defining, okay, how does our AI strategy align with our greater institutional
priorities?
Exactly.
Okay. And our resource capability and our human capital and talent, right? You put all that together to say, okay, we're going all in this area and with a little bit in on this area, but we're not going to touch this third area for at least 2 fiscal years.
Exactly.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because, resources are scarce, right? So you want to focus your resources in the right area where it makes the most sense. Then now that you know that there's a way for people to start using it responsibly, you need to create an AI responsible use policy. So that if people are starting to use AI or they already are using AI, that they have a guide where they say, okay, I'm allowed to do this, or, I need to be careful of the following things. And again, this is all data, right? AI is data. It uses data. You don't want to load institutional data into OpenAI or Claude or any of those large language models without having the appropriate architecture and guardrails. Then
and
the
is
next
this
step,
around the time we can start doing some AI stuff, like build our first bot or build our first AI agent platform? Is it okay at this point to start building, or is there still another step or two before we can start doing that?
the question, the answer is yes. However, I would recommend that as so far it's possible for them to use the university's AI enablement infrastructure. So, meaning Arizona State University is a perfect example of this. They're partnering with OpenAI, but what they've done is they've built sandboxes where people can go in and start experimenting with AI, build tools within AI. But it's done within, a monitored environment, a secure environment with the appropriate guardrails. So I would say, yes, this is the step where you can start building, but,
But ideally, you're not going out into the world building and deploying. You're a little bit still inside in a walled garden, so to speak. Okay.
The walled garden. That's
okay.
That's exactly what it is. And it's safe. It'll be safe and secure, and you can make mistakes. It's not, you can use data that's been scrubbed. By the way, when we say these things, Joe, there's been real examples of corporations. I believe it was Nissan that, the department uploaded all kinds of what they would consider trade secrets into OpenAI to see they were building something within OpenAI, but then now it's out there, right? So that was a big deal. So you want to make sure that you're not doing that. Then okay, so now you have an accurate accounting, you have your governance committee, you have your strategic priorities, you have your enablement infrastructure. So I think that the next good step is that you need to train people, right? You need to train people, you need to communicate with people. So now the university community needs to know that, hey, we're an AI an AI institution. We encourage the use of AI. We have a policy. We have tools for you to start using it, right? So there's a whole
and we have training
strategy
to help you learn everything from the basics to some more advanced techniques.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then just like in all technology deployments, the last step that would always be, you're always using the Deming cycle of you're evaluating how things are being used, you're monitoring it, and then adapt wherever needed or possible. And that's
7 steps to the process, none of which takes decades. It seems like steps 1, 2, 3, 4 can be accomplished in like 6 months or less, depending on the size and scope of the school. And then you're off to the races. You're actually doing stuff. You're starting to get some outcomes and results from some of the experimenting that happened shortly after. But certainly within 12 months, any school should be well on its way to being an AI-driven institution in the areas it has selected to become AI-driven. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's very clear. And I think that's very straightforward. For those who don't have a playbook like this, again, they should just drop you an email, fred@beyondacademics.com, and request a copy of it, and then just kind of customize it as they see fit. Any other thoughts, any other ideas or cautions on this topic of getting going with a playbook?
Well, don't let perfection stand in the way, right? Because that's why the last step is so important. You're always monitoring, you're always evaluating, you're always adapting all of the prior steps. But I think one of the first things you need to do is you need to know what people are doing. And in the case that you can't truly uncover what everybody's doing within a university, and by the way, Joe, there's universities that are small cities with tens of thousands of employees and hundreds of thousands of students. You can never truly know who's sitting in a back office building great stuff, right? But try to do an accurate accounting. And that's where the policy, the AI responsible use policy, is very important. And that needs to be communicated so that even if you don't get everything, that people are aware that, hey, oh shoot, according to the policy, I'm not supposed to do what I'm doing.
But kind of before we close, that brings up a good point. I know almost every institution I've run into or we've run into has already done that work. They very early in the journey started to work on their responsible use policy and start to really look under the hood of ethical use, safety, security, right? So every school is somewhere along the lines of halfway done to completely done with that. But maybe they did that first before they did the inventory like you're recommending, or before they set up the governance. Do these 7 things really have to happen sequentially? Or if I've done step 3 already, can I check that checkbox and just keep going?
Not
What's your recommendation there?
You can, but not automatically. I think now that you're embarking on a series of serious steps. So in your audit of what is it that we're doing, that policy should be one of the items, one of the artifacts in your audit. And then you should review that policy and say, okay, just on first glance, is it still appropriate at this point? Most likely it will be. It needs to be tweaked. And that's fine.
Yeah. And to your point, who better to not just review, but optimize that document than this new governance group, right? Because somebody else may have built the responsible use policy, maybe AIT did, but the functional side didn't. But now you get them to kind of edit it, clean it up, and make sure that it aligns to the priorities that have been selected, right? Because your step 2 and step 2.5 can't operate independently from that responsible use policy and vice versa. They need each other.
Right, exactly.
So my takeaway from that is, if you've already done a couple of these ahead of time, you got to bring them back through the process as though you had never done them before. You may have had a head start, but still do that step as part of the main steps to get the best possible outcome. Otherwise, you could have left something on the outside that will create confusion.
Yeah, exactly. And and in this step where you're building the AI enablement infrastructure, that's a very tricky thing. I think it's necessary, but it's a very tricky thing. And I think the IT department that builds it needs to be very aware that they need to make that as frictionless as possible, and that the customer service around that needs to be very high, because you do need to entice people. So you either force people to do it, right? You could have a policy that says you are not allowed to use any AI on this campus unless it's within our AI enablement infrastructure. Or since that's that's hard to do, let's put it that and it might stifle innovation. You need to make to encourage it, right. But then you need a whole customer service around it and training around it, right? Because when somebody starts something and runs into issues, you need to talk to somebody, right? So
I was just with the CIO. I was just with the CIO on Friday for a very large institution. His big concern was people are just building stuff and we don't know about it, and they're building it and then bringing it to us, going, "Oh, I can't handle this anymore. Can you guys take it over?" Right? That's classic.
Right.
And I think,
in fairness, that's classic. That's not that's not even an
But
AI
when he
issue.
said it, it reminded me of how real that is. And he was referring to SaaS kind of stuff, right? And now he's like, I'm starting to see that on the AI side, but I believe it's going to overwhelm us. But this goes back to your point about building that infrastructure comes after the strategic prioritization, because the CIO needs to be able to make the case saying, look, you guys can talk about all the AI you want and all the impact you want to have in the cloud, but unless you equip my department with the staffing and resources to support it, this whole thing's going to blow up and blow up badly. So the CIO needs to be able to make a business case to gear up and be ready to do the service delivery and provide all the resources, versus, my gosh, we can't even keep the lights on, and you're telling us to oversee the institution's entire, and everyone's coming to us with AI questions. I don't even have an AI guy, right? So I think that's why that strategic conversation is so important. We're having that conversation with so many schools right now to help kind of lead that through and build the right business case to allocate resources correctly. Because without that, it's just frustration waiting to happen.
Yeah, and sooner rather than later, in institutions, not just higher education, but every institution is going to have to start to think about how they have command and control of their systems and their data. Because with AI, it's going to become it's going to become tricky, right? Because right now we have the whole entire cybersecurity teams and departments that put roadblocks and monitor, etc. Right? But again, and I've said this numerous times, the AI discussion in AI Future for an institution really needs to be a discussion first and foremost about data, how data is used, how data is stored, etc. So there are some institutions that are already experimenting with one model, and one model is we basically create a digital twin of all of your data and secure it with blockchain. And then with blockchain smart contracts, you can literally put controls around every single data element. So you can start saying, okay, you're allowed to do this with this data. You can't do X or Y. And then even down to the granular level, if you're a student or a faculty member or a researcher, et cetera, you have your own data set that you can then control and say, okay, I will let my data be used for particular purposes. So I think that's probably the next frontier, because the problem, Joe, is that, not problem, it's an opportunity and a challenge. Let's put it that way. You and I are men of a certain age, right? But we also work with interns within our company where we have 19, 20-year-old kids, you know what I mean? What we call them kids, right? Young men and women that are doing incredible things with publicly available tools. There is tools out there that I can use today and build mini SaaS applications in hours. So this is, look, it's an exciting time, but start with these steps and then grow as time goes on.
All right. Grow, and everyone knows, please do share this video if you think it'll benefit people at your institution, or this is a message somebody needs to hear. Share the video with them, like it. Let us know what questions you have, and don't hesitate to reach out to Fred if you need some support or even a copy of the playbook to customize for your organization. See you all next time.